Welcome, everybody. I'm Selena Rezvani, and you are joining Women and Work Culture. We are really all about helping women rise. And today we are talking about that energy vampire known as burnout and what to do about it. Our esteemed guest today and my friend is here, Emilie Aries. I'm so excited to have you today, Emilie. Welcome.
Thank you so much. That intro music got me hype. I'm excited to be here.
Yay, that's the point. I'm so glad to hear it. And a big welcome to our community. We are so happy to have you here and love learning with you from experts like Emilie. So drop us a note. Tell us, where in the world are you today? Where are you joining from? And hey, send us your questions for Emilie too, as they relate to beating burnout, identifying that it's even happening in the first place. I want to give you a little inside scoop on our special person today, which is this. Emilie Aries is an author, a CEO and founder. She is a speaker and a podcast host. She actually launched her professional development company, Bossed Up. Love that. In 2013. So she's been at this for some time. She has worked with Fortune 500 companies that you've heard of, that you know of, like Facebook and Hilton, American Express, helping them with their diversity and inclusion, their HR, their retention programs. She's been in the Washington Post, CNN Money, BuzzFeed, and more. And she does all this from her HQ in Denver, Colorado, which is pretty cool. Really, her mission is about helping people be the boss of their lives, of their careers. So we can so get behind that. Once again, send us your questions for Emilie. We want to hear what's on your minds and help you take advantage of this power half hour with her. So Emilie, will you tell us a little bit about your story and why this topic of women and burnout is like meaningful to you?
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. So it's not a coincidence that I really started my career and my journey with Bossed Up focused on gender and burnout and having to personally and professionally understand how they're connected, if at all. When I was 24 years old, I managed to completely and utterly burn out myself, which was surprising to me because just a few years earlier, I had graduated with my Ivy League degree in hand, ready to go save the world in my political organizing work with Organizing for America. I stepped into a leadership role at a young age. I was the youngest state director for the newly elected Obama administration in the nation. I had everything going for me on paper. And 3 short years later, I felt like a passenger in my own career path. I felt like I had no control. I had gone from being a college athlete to not having stepped foot in a gym in a few years. Wow. And I felt this compulsive need to just save the world by day. And unfortunately, felt like I had to save my partner's life by night. Because at the time, I found myself in a really toxic relationship with someone who was also a hard-driving, high-achieving, super successful political operative, but who, like millions of Americans, struggles with alcoholism. And somehow in all of my higher education years, I had never learned anything about codependency and had to learn the hard way after ending up in a therapist's office myself, how to regain a sense of control over the life and ambition that I felt like I'd completely lost a handle on.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that. And I think so many people can relate at least one point in their lives of feeling like taken away on a current, you know, that they can't, or they're not feeling quite in control of. We have a question from Anisa asking about this term, burnout culture. I know I've been hearing it too, and I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about that. What is burnout culture?
Sure. Hi, Anisa. What a great question. So Sometimes we confuse burnout for a personal problem, but it's important to acknowledge that this is a societal conundrum. This is a trend on the rise. In fact, if you look at the literature, burnout is not in the DSM, the Diagnostic Manual for Therapists in our country, for a reason. It's not considered a diagnosable mental health disorder like anxiety disorders or depression, even though burnout can very much lead to both of those. Instead, the World Health Organization classifies burnout as a workplace phenomenon, a global workplace phenomenon that's been on the rise. And this has to do with a lot of different factors at play. I'd say you ask different economists and sociologists this question, they'll give you 20 different answers. But I think a big part of it has to do with us as human beings trying to keep up with our computerized counterparts, right? Unlike computers, we can't actually have multiple programs operating at once continuously without any drag. That's not how we work. And yet over the past 30 years, as AI and technology has accelerated the pace of innovation and change in our workplaces, I think we've lost touch with what makes human capital and our human gifts so valuable. We cannot treat ourselves like we treat our iPhones or Blackberries or laptops, right? We have to acknowledge that this increase in hours worked, which has steadily gone up for the average employee, has actually met a diminishing point of return, right? So a point of diminishing returns, as economists would call it. Our hours that we put in, especially here in the US, has reached a point where our output, our GDP, is not continuing to rise. So even as we log more hours, even as we put in more work, our results are dropping off. We're not seeing a return on that investment. So burnout culture is really important to how we talk about burnout because it acknowledges the systemic forces at play and helps individuals see that this is not a you problem. This is a we problem, and we need to collectively do something about it.
Yes, we do. We really do. Thank you for that question, Anisa. And hello to our friends in Germany, to Linda in New Jersey, to Gloria in Phoenix, Anisa from Tampa Bay. We're happy to see you all. I want to talk about something you bring up in your book, in your great book, Bossed Up, which I really recommend. And it's around martyrdom.
Yeah.
Why is this a thing for women, and how does it impact burnout?
Yeah, so I introduced this term in my book called the martyrdom mindset. And to me, it's a combination of two underlying philosophies that I know a lot of American women in particular, and I certainly feel tethered to, sometimes in unconscious and certainly unhelpful ways. So the martyrdom mindset to me is this idea that success requires suffering. If it's not hard, it's not worth going for it, right? This idea that you can't achieve success delightfully. If it were easy, then it wouldn't be worth pursuing, right? This mindset really creeps in a lot of different ways. I think it stems from two things. Here in the US, especially, the Protestant work ethic, which was part of the ideology that really founded our nation. We're talking Plymouth Rock,
Right.
Who truly believe, this is where we get the phrase, idle hands are the devil's workshop. They believed that leisure equals evil.
Yeah.
So there's this normative value placed on personal productivity that still underpins our entire capitalist democracy here in the US. I am only worthy as a human being if I'm being productive. Now you take that and you swirl it up with what's happened with women in the workforce in the last 50 years. Post-World War II, all women, including the white middle-class women who had previously been happily or not so happily being housewives for the most part, enter the workforce in mass, joining the women of color who'd been there for many decades previously. And all of a sudden, women's roles not only, they didn't just shift, they expanded. So now it wasn't good enough to be a great homemaker and a great wife and a great mother, if you choose to pursue that. But now we have to be dual income earning households to make ends meet, right? So now instead of that shift becoming just a different substitute for women's labor, it became what Arlie Hochschild called the second shift. And that's continued to today. You look at the Washington Post study from, I think it was 2012, in households with full-time working women and full-time working men. So yes, this is a very heteronormative study, but in that kind of a household, women are still shouldering about twice the amount of childcare and housework duties than men. And the sad part is that is the best those numbers have ever looked. So men are doing more than ever before by doing about 50% of what women are. So the martyrdom mindset is a combination of everything that's messed up about the expansion of women's gender roles, not the simplification of them, and the Protestant work ethic that leaves so many women, in particular, feeling guilty all the time, feeling like we're never doing enough, or when we're succeeding at work, we're somehow failing at home. And that instinct to fall on the sword for the folks we care about, to demonstrate our unconditional love by sacrificing our well-being along the way, manifests in the form of truly toxic work cultures and burnout that impact women in really devastating ways.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of those pressures we can all feel to be the one to reassure, to help, to stop what you're doing to go fix somebody else's issue. There's so much of that on women. And I want to get right to a question both Michelle and Rahi are asking. Welcome, Rahi from Ottawa, which is they both want to hear what some of those red flags are, those warning signs of burnout. What should we be looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are 4 root causes of burnout that always come to mind when I think about warning signs. When I feel a lack of agency in my life, like I was having escapist fantasies at one point, even though I had a great job and everything in my life looked like it was going well, if you find yourself looking out the window and thinking, what if I just give it all up and eat, pray, love my way into a midlife crisis, right? That's a warning sign. It feels, what it tends to belie is a lack of feeling in control of the outcomes of your life. So a lack of personal agency feels like you don't have any control, like you're in the passenger seat of life. A lack of rest is pretty obvious, right? I know that a lot of my friends who are new parents have, are just accepting of the lack of agency in their lives right now because they gotta be, and the lack of rest in their lives is part of it. But chronically not getting enough sleep at night, or not even just thinking about it on a daily basis, rest on a quarterly basis, on a yearly basis, never unplugging, never walking away from your email for more than 24 hours. That kind of a lack of rest on a systemic basis is also a warning sign of burnout on the way. And then a lack of community and a lack of purpose. Those two are often sneaky little warning signs, because at one point in my life, I thought having friends is a luxury I do not have time for right now. I am doing this busy, important work that I care so much about to pass federal health reform and register voters and, help get approval for Justice Sotomayor. Like, who has time for brunch? I don't. And that attitude is so short-sighted. Actually, friends are an absolutely essential component to a healthy basis or foundation of mental well-being. So community is key. And then finally, a lack of purpose. I can't tell you how many high-powered attorneys and stockbrokers come through my doors at Bossed Up saying, I have rest, I have financial abundance, I have a lot of agency in my life, but oh my gosh, if I'm going to pull my hair out if I have to go to work for one more day, lining the pockets of my boss, who I don't even think is that great of a person, and nothing that I'm doing with my life feels purposeful or meaningful or like it's in alignment with my core values. That in and of itself can lead you to burnout as well.
Rahi saying that is so me. So I think people relating here to what you're saying. For all of us listening, how can you take a quick audit in your own life of how you're feeling about that agency and control, the rest? Are you getting enough? The community, are you plugging in? Are you trying to be an island? And the purpose, how can you bring your purpose closer? Love this advice, Emilie. Really helpful. Send us your questions for Emilie. And hey, community, tell us, how does burnout manifest for you? What's a clue that something's not right here? For me, I know one of those kind of cry outs is being tired constantly, feeling crabby, kind of losing that optimism that I like to think I have most of the time. What is it for you?
Totally.
What is something you're going to watch?
Yeah, that's a great question.
You've taught this to so many women through thousands of workshops, and I'm wondering, does anything surprise you in these sessions when it comes to burnout, how people receive this or what they do with it?
Yeah, one thing that I think continues to be something that I personally wrestle with myself is, especially as a leader and a team leader, and if anyone here listening is a manager of people, this continues to come up for me. This year especially, I find it challenging in this crazy time we're in to balance empathy and compassion, right? For folks who are burnt out, with acknowledging that there's personal responsibility there too. Because I'll tell you what, when I was totally and completely burnt out, I was not showing up for my team well. I was not showing up for my loved ones well. I was not being the best person I could be to others. And I felt very much like a victim in my life. And you know what? Like, a lot of people are victimized by inequities and injustices and systemic oppression. We just had equal pay day yesterday. You know the numbers. Like, this shit is not fair. So that mindset of feeling out of control of your life can manifest in really awful ways, like you mentioned, being crabby and just not being your best self. How do you balance compassion and empathy for that person who is struggling and saying, what's going on? Are you okay? What do you need to do to manage yourself and your energy and your well-being better? Because this is clearly not you being your best self, versus holding those folks accountable and saying, hey, for my ex-boyfriend who is an addict, who was in complete denial of having any kind of a problem, he didn't want my help. I couldn't change his world. I couldn't save his life. And in fact, I had to put my own oxygen mask on and save my own before I could be of any use to others. And leaving that relationship was very difficult and one of the scariest things I've ever had to do. But only through getting support myself, seeking out therapy and asking someone to help me get out of that situation, because I was in way over my head, was I able to say, here are my boundaries. Here's what I will not tolerate from those in my life. And here's what I expect from a basic human standard of respect, And so it continues to be challenging for folks who are feeling completely burnt out. Hearing my message can feel a little bit like a call out, especially when something's not right. There is a lack of alignment in your life. Guess what? No one's going to change that but you. And honestly, oftentimes no one can start to change it but you. That's a hard message to balance. And that's what I continue to try to do every day on my podcast, in my book. It's like, how do we reconcile that? No, things are not fair. And if you're feeling out of control of your life, you very well may have every right to feel like this isn't your fault. And what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, that's great. And I think you're broaching an important subject, which is you may have people in your life that worsen this, that encourage, burnout conditions and choices. Like, that's another good thing to audit, right?
Totally.
How much time do you really want to be spending with those people? It's okay to limit it, to say no. I want to raise a question from Rahi. I think plenty of people are feeling this. Being away from the workplace, family, friends due to COVID, it's isolating. What should we do about community? How can we build that?
Such a great question. I love thinking about community and purpose together, right? Because if you can get that 2-for-1 kind of double word score, bringing people together virtually, I know, is not nearly as much fun, but in person, if and when and however it's safest to do so, given what we're all navigating right now, if you can create a meaningful moment for yourself and others, I want to first acknowledge that takes labor. That takes mental labor. Someone, like a great birthday party doesn't just happen. It often makes it, women who often shoulder this mental load for many households often make it look like it just came together. But there's serious thought that goes into this. One of my favorite books that I read this past year is Priya Parker's book on the art of gathering. Highly recommend for anyone who's hosting a birthday party, a brunch, or a conference, or regularly host meetings. Whether it's a virtual event or an in-person event, think about how you can create opportunities for meaning. I'll give you two quick examples. For Thanksgiving this past year, which we did in November in Colorado on my back patio, outdoors, masked up, socially distanced, with just my family members and members of my household, and my parents, who fortunately I'm very lucky to have nearby. I asked them for weeks leading up to Thanksgiving to send me a photo that represents one of the highlights of this terrible year that we've all been living through for 2020. And without telling them what I was going to do with it, when they arrived in our little outdoor setup with a fire pit and like space heaters and everything, I had a little setup with framed printed pictures that everybody submitted, so that it wasn't just for them to take home as a favor. It was for all of us to gather around and say, oh, I love this photo you picked. Tell me about that moment. What did that mean to you? Right? That was a really meaningful little touch that created moments for meaning for our whole community. And the second example is my extended family, who I couldn't gather with this holiday season on the East Coast. Instead of doing a gift exchange ourselves, which felt a little, I don't know, just not motivating to us this year, we adopted a family in need. I don't know if adopted is the right word, but we decided to buy gifts for a particular family in a shelter here in Colorado. And all of our extended family members sent the gifts to me. I compiled them, I organized them, I made sure that they met up to the list that these children had written to Santa Claus. And then I documented dropping those off, and I sent the email and video that came around from the organization that helped make it happen. So again, creating meaningful opportunities for purpose-driven impact with your community member. It just feels more meaningful if you can do that digitally or in person. Those are some ideas to get you going, but hopefully we'll all be able to hang out real soon, because I miss eyeball to eyeball IRL connections too.
Yes, those are such great examples, though. I love the thinking creatively to not just find meaning from other people in their life, but to kind of build on it, to create dialogue and exchange those moments. I think that's so creative. Gloria chiming in with her comment, tired, but with insomnia, lots on my mind. It's hard to shut it all off with stress, trying to take time for me. Sleep is so important. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that part of the burnout equation.
Totally. I kind of went on a mission a couple of years ago as a lifelong rebel when it came to sleep. Even when I was a kid, I was like, who has time to nap? There's life to be lived. I don't want to nap.
YOLO, right?
Yeah, exactly. My parents were not thrilled about that. But even, I had this feeling of, I've seen it called something, I forget the name, but this phenomenon of rebelliousness. Maybe if I, after you feel like you've devoted so much time to work, maybe if I stay up really late doing whatever I want to do, that's a form of rebellion, a way to subconsciously take charge of your life. And then, of course, the cycle repeats and it gets worse and worse and worse because we're not sleeping. I went on a mission a couple of years ago that I chronicled on my blog to really hack sleep. I was like, I need to figure this sleep thing out. And now I'm proud to say I get 8 hours of sleep a night. It is like a must for me. Granted, this is the privilege of not having a child as well, just to call that out. But it looks like coming up with a routine that works for you, knowing yourself when it comes to setting digital boundaries. If my phone is within reach from my bed, I will be on TikTok until 2:00 in the morning every night. So sometimes I literally have to say to my partner, can you please take my phone away from me? Like, take it away. Or my best habit is plugging in my phone in the kitchen, far away from my bedroom. And then I have a wake up lamp that I swear by that helps me slowly wake up with like brightening lights. And then finding the hours that work best for you. If you are a bit of a night owl, find a way, if you can. I know our work culture is very, very keen on the 9 to 5 working hours, but I know people who do their best work until 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and that means they're not coming into the office until 10 or 11 in the morning. So if you can negotiate and advocate to know your biorhythms. I think Gretchen Rubin calls them morning larks or night owls. Try not to resist that. Try to lean into that. And then finally, if stress is what's keeping you up at night and stress is the source of your insomnia, none of these tips are going to work for you. You got to figure out what's at the root of that stress and then act on that. If it's financial stress, what is your money plan? Who are you meeting with? What kind of help do you need to take charge there? If it's something else, I cannot recommend therapy enough. I know therapists are in high demand right now, but I think any of us getting through this year just bare knuckling it without a therapist, it just blows my mind. And I find a lot of support even today in the therapist I meet with every 2 weeks just to process whatever's weighing on me. So get at the root of the stress. If it's stress that's keeping you up, you're not going to, essential oil your way to.
Right. That's such good advice. Yeah, don't feel like you have to go it alone. Therapy's awesome. It's where you can find me every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Okay, so that's why I'm not answering the phone or the email during that time, but it makes a huge difference. I want to ask you, for that woman who's really trying to build sustainable happiness into her life in this long-term way, not just making the next choice in front of her. Do you have any advice for really thinking about this long-term, preventing burnout?
Yeah, I think one term I talk a lot about in my book is what I call sustainable success. Sustainable success looks different for everyone. It's about clarifying what your triggers are, how to eliminate them, and what your must-haves are. Sometimes pursuing sustainable success means sacrificing things in the short term, like maybe not taking the highest paid job you could possibly have because it sucks your soul, right? Like maybe it means not having the ultimate power in your city council, because in order to have healthy boundaries for yourself, you need to focus on yourself and your family and your work right now. Maybe you don't have it in you. Maybe you got to quit some shit, right? Like that's another part of this, is saying no to the obligations in our life that we are doing out of guilt. And so I think a big part of pursuing sustainable success is just remembering the long game. The opposite of the martyrdom mindset is rejecting the notion that success requires suffering. If I'm pursuing something, even great, hard, long-term projects like writing a book, which Selena, is not an easy thing to do.
No.
It's not going to feel good to suffer my way to that finish line. So what are my non-negotiables? My non-negotiables include getting outside every day. If I'm not outside every day, I'm not a happy person. And I know that about myself, right? Feeding myself well, even if it is on a tight budget, which it has been over the years. What are the things that you need to feel taken care of, to feel like you've parented yourself a little bit? And you got to advocate for those, and you got to demand those from the world, even if it means sacrificing other things along the way. So it's not glamorous work. This is not a glamorous process that I lay out in my book. It really is piece by piece rediscovering our backbone, right? Rediscovering not only what I need, but how to be my own best self-advocate, which I know is something you care a lot about too. And it is a radical act in this world for a woman to demand what she needs from the universe. And it's sometimes going to get you called some nasty words, and you're not going to please everybody. And that is the price we pay for being the boss of our lives. Not everybody likes me. And I'm slowly but surely becoming more and more okay with that every day.
We applaud that, and we can guess what some of those other B words are that aren't boss or burnout, right? Some other B words. We have a tradition here. We ask our guests to share with us as a final question, what's your parting truth bomb? How do we get this burnout prevention thing right? What do you want to really stick in our minds?
Yeah, my favorite line that I always come back to in a lot of my different programs and my podcast is have confidence in your ability to figure it out. It's not about having confidence that you'll figure it out tomorrow or that you already know how to figure it out. You might not have a damn clue how to get from where you are to where you want to be, but that doesn't prevent you from having faith that you can and you will figure this out. So proceed with confidence in your ability to figure it out.
I love it. If you take the wrong turn, make a wrong move, you can right yourself. I think we all need to hear that, Emilie, and thank you for your super practical advice, for your really empowering message. I know I've taken a lot away from this, and everybody here has too, judging by the comments. You all can keep in touch with Emilie by seeing some links to stay in touch with her in the show notes. Follow her here on LinkedIn if you're not already. You're also going to see links to her website, to grab her book, which I strongly recommend. I saw some of you said you can't wait to dig in, and to listen to her podcast, also called Bossed Up. Look at that brand alignment. I hope you'll stay in touch with me too. Stay in touch and follow me here on LinkedIn. Check out my courses on building up your confidence. And I hope you'll also join my new newsletter on LinkedIn called Quick Confidence. Thank you again, Emilie. Thanks to our community. Remember, you are your own best advisor and caretaker. As our guest has told us today, listen to your cues. I hope you all will stay well and lead on. Thanks so much.